The ASU Helios Decision Center for Educational Excellence was formed with two goals: improving Arizona's educational systems and our economy as a result, and reducing the inequities in those systems. We pursue these goals by bringing data together from across the state and using it in a few different ways. One of them, one core activity, is launching innovative new initiatives. You might have read about one of them in the Arizona Republic actually just this week, our personalized admissions effort. One of the persistent challenges we have in Arizona is that too many young people who have the potential to go on to college don't see that for themselves. I grew up at about 13th Avenue in Indian School. I spent most of my childhood at Metro Tech and Alhambra and the Osborne schools where my parents worked. And when I'm back in my old neighborhood and I'm talking up ASU, asking kids about their plans for college, the phrase that just kills me is, that's not for me. College isn't for me. And so what we've done, it could be for any number of reasons, because they don't have a family member who went, or they don't know anyone there. Maybe they're worried about the cost. So what we've done with this initiative, as the Arizona Republic detailed this week, is that we have facilitated all three universities, ASU, U of A, and NAU, sending acceptance letters to students before they've even applied, eliminating the doubt, letting them know that financial aid will be available. It is life-changing. This effort started off as a pilot just a couple years ago with only Phoenix Union. And thanks to Joe O'Reilly and Momoko Rai, we're now partnering with districts that include more than half of Arizona's graduating seniors. We hope to expand to the entire state soon. So that's just one example of the way that we use data to take action and directly improve outcomes. As Vince mentioned, our other core way of working is bringing data together in visualizations to help Arizona's leaders use that data to guide their work and their decision-making. We have 7-screen interactive decision theaters here on the Helios campus, as Vince mentioned, at ASU, and at our headquarters in DC, just around the corner from the White House. For these theaters, we build interactive data visualizations across the entirety of our educational continuum, from pre-K to employment. And today, we're excited to publicly debut, for the first time, our Arizona Education and Workforce Visualization. I'm excited to share it with you in the hope that you will be able to use it to advance your work, your goals, your mission. We have actually a very exciting announcement to make. After you've seen this here today, you can use it in your work, at your desk, throughout the state, whether you're an educator, a policymaker, an economic development official. All you have to do is schedule time to come in, sit down with us to look through the tool, and we will give you a login that you can use in perpetuity. We're very excited about that. So before I begin, I want to thank the entire ASU Helios Decision Center team, because everybody had a really important role in getting us here today. Will the team please stand up? Can you guys stand up? Joe, Geb? In particular, thank you, Joe, for your leadership, and thank you, Gev and Christy, for getting us here and continuing to advance this tool. So now we begin. On the first screen of what would be 7 simultaneously displayed screens in our decision theater, we're looking at the entirety of Arizona's economy, every industry, county by county. This is normally an hour or 2 long presentation, so we're going to try to do the highlights only. Keep it to 20 minutes. What you're looking at here is slide 1, an overview of our economy. You can choose any given county. You can choose the entire state, Arizona, or you can choose a particular county. We're going to begin with Maricopa. We'll compare it to a few others. We're looking at indices here, education indice here, and an economy score here, comparing our educational performance with similar counties where we are clearly behind, and our economic performance with similar counties across the country where we're pretty much matching. We can also look at overall background on the county, education and income by a racial and ethnic group, where we see huge disparities, huge inequities in terms of both educational attainment, which is represented by the red bar, high school or less, the blue bar, associates or some college, and the yellow bar, bachelor's or higher, but also the associated income with any given one of those levels of educational attainment for each racial and ethnic group. We can also look here on this first screen at the overall demographics of the region that we're examining. Here we're looking at Maricopa County. Maricopa County is 57% white, 29% Hispanic and Latino. We're a pretty young county. As you can see here, we have more 25 to 34-year-olds than 35 to 44-year-olds and so forth, until you get to our large retiree population. So we'll keep that in mind as we begin going deeper into each industry. What we're now looking at is an overview of Maricopa's economy as a whole. There are 2 million jobs in Maricopa County. We put together a statistic we call H3, which are the good jobs, high wage, high skill, high demand. Only a third of our jobs are jobs that we would classify as really good jobs. In the next decade, we'll need another 500,000 degrees. This industrial diversity score, 93, is a representation on a 0 to 100 scale of how resilient our economy is. Are we overly dependent on one industry, or are we pretty diverse? As folks in this room know, a few decades ago, this number would have been much lower. We were heavily dependent on construction and housing. In fact, if we look at some comparison counties, we can go to Coconino. And Coconino, which is heavily dependent on tourism, is only at 72. If we come back up to Yuma, which is so dependent on agriculture, we see that number change again down to 25. So we should feel very proud, in large part because of many of the leaders in this room, that Maricopa's economy has diversified and become more resilient over the past few decades. Median earnings in Maricopa County are at $49,000. Over here, we're looking at every single industry in Maricopa County. The blue bar represents current jobs, and the yellow, the change we expect by 2030. What we have in Arizona and Maricopa specifically is nothing but opportunity. If we were in Indiana or Pennsylvania, we'd see many of these industries shrinking, drying up. But here we see nothing but growth. It's an enormous opportunity for us as a state. Over here, we're now looking at each industry represented by a bubble. The industries above this line are more concentrated in Maricopa County than in the rest of the country. The industries below this line are less concentrated in Maricopa County than the rest of the country. To the right of this line, that concentration is increasing. To the left of this line, that concentration is declining. So we're doing great in finance and insurance, which is both more concentrated in Maricopa County than the rest of the country, and growing. But unfortunately, information, an industry with more than half of the jobs are good jobs, we actually see not only are we below concentration that the rest of the nation has, but also decreasing rapidly relative to the rest of the nation. Even though our information sector is growing, it's not growing rapidly enough to keep pace with the rest of the country. Moving on to the next slide, we can go deeper into any given industry. Right now, we've started off on manufacturing. In manufacturing in Maricopa County, a third of the jobs are really good jobs. The turnover rate is 46%. Representativeness is, again, on a scale of 0 to 100. How much does this workforce look like the workforce of the county as a whole? It's fairly representative on the basis of race and ethnicity, but not gender. Net migration, 1,358 people moving in this industry in the last year. The age curve, you can see, is fairly normal. If we were to switch over to information, for example, that age curve is much more tilted toward younger workers. We go back to manufacturing. Right now, we're looking at all jobs. And so take a look at the racial and ethnic representation and the gender representation when we go from all jobs to the best jobs. The percentage male increases, the percentage white increases significantly. We see this in almost every single industry. Let's go back to information. Right now, we're on all jobs. It's a fairly representative industry as a whole, but when we go to the best jobs, we see that inequity pop right back up again. Returning to, we'll leave it on information for a moment. Clicking over here to maps. So we're looking at two different maps here. On the left is regional concentration. This is a representation of how concentrated this industry is in your state. The bluer it is, the more concentrated, the pinker, the less concentrated. As we can see, this is an industry that is particularly concentrated in just a few states. Washington, by far, out front, with Amazon and Microsoft and the entire ecosystem built out around them. Arizona could be on this path too. Some of you may not remember this, but when Boeing shut down their operations in Seattle, the economy crashed so hard that there was a billboard as you were leaving town that said, "Will the last person leaving Seattle please turn out the lights?" Well, Microsoft turned it back on, and then Amazon came too. So we don't have that problem. We're growing, not shrinking, but we do need the next Microsoft. We do need the next Amazon. Looking over here to the right, this map is, as you can see, we're behind the rest of the nation, but most states are behind the rest of the nation because Washington and New York and others are so far out front. Over here, we're looking at regional migration. Did workers in this industry move to Arizona? Those are the states represented in blue. Or did workers move from Arizona to other states? Those are the states represented in pink. We only lost information sector workers to Oregon and Washington. We're bringing them in from across the country. Now, part of this is just a relic of our growth overall. We are a growing state. During COVID, we were the fastest growing county in the entire country, one of only 10 counties that grew during that time. Again, nothing but opportunity. But we should think about how that comparative advantage has changed. We built an economy predicated on our ability to recruit workers with bachelor's or advanced degrees to Arizona to fill all those great jobs, all those yellow bars that you saw. That's the economy we built, dependent on recruitment. And we were able to succeed. We've been able to succeed at that, in large part because of our sunny days, but also our comparatively low cost of living and low housing cost. That advantage has evaporated in the last 3 years. The Phoenix metro area during the pandemic had the highest increase in housing costs of any major city in the entire country, unless you consider Boise to be a major city, and I don't. Our housing costs went up 42%. 42%. So workers who are looking at their options across the country, they're looking at Texas with continually low housing costs and comparing those options to Arizona now. So we have to think about how we can grow our own talent, how we can succeed by being homegrown. We'll move to the next slide here. Now, for any given industry, we can go much deeper into every single occupation within that industry. I've gone back to manufacturing. The blue bars are current jobs, again. The yellow bars are growth. We see almost nothing but growth in the manufacturing sector in Maricopa County. Again, if we go to H3, the best jobs, the job mix changes. Industrial engineers pop up, supervisors, operations managers. If we go back to all jobs, by far the most common job, miscellaneous assembler and fabricator, frontline worker, working hard with their hands. That job has a starting salary of $29,000. That is below a living wage for an adult with no dependents here in Maricopa County. In fact, we've charted all of these jobs over here on the basis of their starting salary, right here, and their exposure to automation risk, right here. As you can see, there are a number of jobs up here with very low starting salaries and very high exposure to automation. We've colored each of these bubbles. The size of each bubble represents the number of jobs in that occupation. We've then colored each of them on the basis of the educational requirements of that job. Manufacturing jobs in Maricopa County that require a bachelor's degree or higher are generally quite high starting salary, well above the living wage line here of $36,000, even above the living wage with a dependent line of $67,000. Those are the jobs that those with a bachelor's degree going into manufacturing in Maricopa County can expect to get. But people who are going into manufacturing with a high school degree or lower are looking at jobs with very low starting salaries, almost all below a living wage, and extraordinarily high exposure to automation risk. We can change the color of the bubbles here. Instead of looking at education, we'll examine again with an equity lens the percent of people in each of these jobs in Maricopa County who are Hispanic and Latino. So if you're Hispanic and Latino in Maricopa County working in manufacturing, the jobs in which 60% or more of the workforce is Hispanic and Latino have extraordinarily low starting salaries and very high exposure to automation risk. The same is true of jobs that are 45 to 60% Latino representation. If we flip over to the other side, manufacturing jobs where there are very few Hispanic and Latino workers, 0 to 15%, we're now looking at many of the most privileged jobs with very high starting salaries, very low exposure to automation. So we'll come back to this concept of automation risk in a moment. Going down to the next slide, all 7 of these, again, display simultaneously in the decision theater. Here we're looking at a particular occupation now. We've gone from industry down to occupation. Miscellaneous assemblers and fabricators, by far the most common manufacturing occupation. We see pretty high exposure to automation, a lot of demand, fairly low attrition, low unemployment rate. On the basis of race and ethnicity, it's fairly representative of the country of the county as a whole. Again, in manufacturing, we see less representation of women. The age curve is more normal than I would expect. Right? These are folks working in their 40s and in their 50s in very difficult manual labor jobs. Flipping over to income, This is all controlling for inflation. So we have seen that junior income, median income, and senior income have increased over time. Median income from $22,000 back in 2005 to $35,000 now, but that's still barely above a living wage, just below rather, a living wage. We can also see disparities in pay relative to race and ethnicity. Our Hispanic and Latino workers in this profession make thousands of dollars less than those of other races and ethnicities. Let's look at another job that's been in the news a lot lately. Semiconductor technicians. Has anybody heard any news about any semiconductor activity in Maricopa County? All right, so again, this is inflation adjusted during a period of offshoring where a lot of the work was being done overseas. We see pretty flat wages here, all the way up until 2018. And then we see a huge demand spike. This is a high opportunity job right now, particularly in Maricopa County. We'll go back to miscellaneous assemblers and fabricators as we move to the next slide, which I'm really excited about. So when I was in the White House years ago, the Obama administration, we were re-examining and overhauling our job training activities. And one of the things that frustrated me most is we had a group coming in from Kentucky. They were losing coal mining jobs. I said, we got tens of thousands of workers who are going to be out of work. At the time, coding boot camps were like a really hip thing to talk about. They said, we've got a great idea. We're going to turn them from coal workers into coders. And I thought to myself about the lack of respect that showed for the extraordinary skills that many of these men and women had built over decades of hard work in the mines, doing all sorts of different jobs. Rather than saying, what can we do? What opportunities are there that build on your skills? They said, what you do, what you did, we don't need it anymore. We've taken the opposite approach. We've said, if you're, say, a miscellaneous assembler and fabricator, we know that job is low pay, high exposure to automation risk, but you've built real skills. What pathway is available to you that you're 80 or 90% qualified for based on those skills? I couldn't be more excited about this function of the tool. If you're already working on the line, then to become an industrial engineering technologist or technician, you'd be looking at an income increase of $27,000, significantly lower automation risk, and what's more, we've articulated exactly what the delta is between the skills that someone in this first job would have and what they would need to learn to move up to this job. Preventative maintenance, hydraulics, industrial repair and maintenance, programmable logic controllers. We can build job training and educational programs around this. If instead they want to be an industrial mechanic, it's a different set of skills that they would need to add on. If instead we want to look at installation, maintenance, and repair, it's HVAC popping up, right? So all of these pathways that are available to people that often they can't see from where they sit, right? You're just going to work. You're trying to feed your family. You don't know what jobs are available at the next factory over or at the next site over. What we're showing here is a pathway for all of Arizona's workers from wherever they are to where they could go, not based on some professor's idea of what people ought to know, but based on the skills they already have and the opportunities that could be available for them with just a little bit more learning. We can also take this from the flip side. Let's go back to that really high opportunity job we were talking about, semiconductor technicians. Now, I don't want to get too enmeshed in the argument, but we've heard that there aren't enough talented workers here in Maricopa County to take those jobs. So people are talking about other solutions. I think other solutions are great too. It's always great to have talent coming into Arizona. We support that. But the notion that we don't have people here in Arizona who can take these jobs is just wrong-headed. So let's look at it from the other side. Instead of starting with the job you have and the skills you have, we'll start with where you want to go. Semiconductor technician, that's a great opportunity. As you can see here, most of the folks who are in those jobs now have less than a bachelor's degree. Though those with a bachelor's degree do earn meaningfully more, or an associate's degree do earn meaningfully more. But where are folks actually coming from? Where are these workers who are working at Intel? This is not a theoretical exercise. This is not where could people come from. This is the workers right now who are in this job in Maricopa County. Where did they come from? Well, the third most common feeder job is miscellaneous assembler and fabricator. Folks already had a great deal of the skills they needed. They just needed the opportunity to build on that. This is all about opportunity for Arizona. But the opportunity is something that we've got to take advantage of. I'm going to move to the last slide here, education. Because, actually, let me go all the way back up to the map. This has been our economic design, right? This is our design right here. People migrating to Arizona. People with bachelor's degrees and master's degrees, professional degrees, coming here so that we can continue to grow. But that comparative advantage is largely evaporated with our housing costs shooting up. So how about educating our own? Can we have a homegrown workforce? Well, in 4th grade reading and 8th grade math, we're roughly on par with the rest of the nation. When you adjust for the income of our parents, of the kids' parents, we're actually in the low 20s nationwide. It's not bad. It's pretty good performance for a system that is so deeply underinvested in. Near the bottom of the nation in cost of living adjusted teacher pay. It's not performing that bad. But when you get to high school graduation, we're now 10 percentage points behind the rest of the nation. Remember, when we're looking at the best jobs, you need a bachelor's degree or higher. High school graduation, you're not even graduating high school, here's where you're stuck. High exposure to automation, low starting salary. So we come back to education. We are 10 percentage points behind the rest of the nation in high school graduation, and then 15 percentage points behind the rest of the nation in post-secondary enrollment coming out of high school. You know, I've been in Arizona now for a few decades, and I have seen, we talked about that resilience score, you know, that diversity, industrial diversity score. I have seen Arizona's leaders, irrespective of partisan affiliation, our political leaders, our business leaders, our civic leaders, I have seen them come to agreement over the past few decades. We had to build a more diverse and resilient economy, a high-tech economy. Because of the people in this room, we have succeeded at that. That's the picture we just showed you. An unbelievably vibrant economy because of that elite agreement. In order to get workers into those jobs, the same folks agreed we have to have a world-class education system, a higher education system, rather. And we built it. You know, my boss, Michael Crow, the leadership at U of A and NAU, over the past few decades have built world-class universities. What I have never seen in my entire life is agreement across Arizona's elite business, political, and civic leaders that our kids should be the ones getting those opportunities. Our kids should be the ones taking advantage of this incredibly vibrant economy. We have left them behind. That cannot happen anymore. In this room and in every other room that every one of us go to, we have to say the top priority in this incredibly successful economy that we've built is that our kids should thrive in it. Our high school graduation rate, our post-secondary enrollment have to keep up. And it is not just an economic imperative, it is a question of equity. Looking at every racial and ethnic group across Maricopa County, we see deeply inequitable access to the educational preparation that students need to succeed. And as a result, four-year graduation rates are vastly different across subgroups. High school graduation rates, vastly different across subgroups. We must do better if we want our economy to continue to thrive. This, right here, is nothing but opportunity. And the question is, will our kids be the ones taking advantage of that opportunity? So I hope that in using this tool in your work every day, you are able to help advance that goal, that you are able to help our economy continue to thrive. We are so fortunate to have you with us. Thank you for being here today.